知心志，欢迎各位来到知心志远系列讲座第2期。ChatGPT 来袭，我们如何适者生存？近年来呢，我们见证了很多人工智能以惊人的速度进行发展，它彻底的改变了我们生活的方方面面。就比如说 ChatGPT 的存在已经很大的程度上改变了我们的教育行业，越来越多的学生呢正在利用人工智能来完成他们的学业，这是好事还是坏事呢？今天我们怀着好奇心，并且非常荣幸的邀请到了罗博深教授，他来自卡耐基梅隆大学，同时又身兼国际奥林匹克数学赛美国国家队的主教练，并且今天的活动呢，我们是由3个团队共同承办，他们是由 CTUAAA 美洲交通大学校友会、Capital Youth Outreach Club 和 The Hopkins Club for Innovation and Entrepreneurship。我们想对这3个团体的成员和领导团队表示衷心的感谢。今天的议程呢，我们会包括由罗教授和我们交通大学美洲校友会的秘书长陈博士的 Fireside Chat。接下来呢，我们会有问答环节。在活动开始之前，我想把这话筒交给我们交通大学美洲校友总会的会长谢东师。
大家好我们校友们好，还有各个朋友好。我再次就是祝贺我们这个活动的举办。就是我们交通大学美洲校友会一直以来是我们服务5所交大校友包括上海交大、西安交大、西南交大和北京交大，以及现在的阳明交大5个学校的校友我们现在的分会呢也有10个分会遍布美国和加拿大。校友活动从历史上是很悠久了，可以追溯到上个世纪20-30年代。那最近我们去年办了一个分会很多校友参加。那今年我们继续举办各个活动这个知心志远系列今天是第2次讲座，质量非常好非常期待今天的讲座。我知道很多这次报名的校友和各个朋友也非常多，非常期待今天的讲座。感谢罗教授来参与来给我们最新的分享，谢谢。
非常感谢谢东会长的致辞。我们的 Fireside Chat 呢会用英文来进行，然后 Q&A 环节会用中文来进行。Without further ado, I'm gonna handle the stage to Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Bean, for this very nice introduction, and many thanks to Dr. Law for accepting our invitation. And I'm actually you see my background is different because I'm traveling, and when we're traveling and trying to organize some stuff, it's kind of different. So just to our topic today is talk about AI and ChatGPT. So to save my time, before I came to open up this session, I just asked ChatGPT how to actually Google Bard is counterpart of ChatGPT. Well, can you help me do this preparation? Because I really don't have time to do this. Well, I think that is a great way to kick off this session. How we use this in the context of using general AI to prepare for your work. So I just basically asked about Bard about, do you know the head coach of U.S. Math Olympiad team? You know what answer is? Yes, I do. And I will just read out this part. I'll listen to I'll say the audience whether you like this introduction or not. Well, yes, I do. And the current head coach of the U.S. Math Olympiad team is Dr. Paulson Law. He is an associate professor of mathematics at Carnegie Mellon University and a Hertz Foundation Fellow. He has been the head coach of the team and for the U.S. Olympia math team since 2009, and has led the team to 4 first-place rankings in the last 6 years. Oh my God. He's known for his innovative teaching methods and his ability to motivate and inspire students. Wow, I'm looking forward to be inspired tonight. Well, I don't know, about the audience, whether you like this introduction or not, but I think if I'm for a fresh eye, if I see instruction like this, I would buy it. I would say that's a wonderful, short introduction. But who can say yes or no? That's definitely Dr. Low. So I'll just pass by this introduction from the board and ask Dr. Low to say hi to this lovely audience tonight in your own way. Dr. Low, can you say hi to the audience?
Sure, it's very nice to meet all of you. Let me just adjust this. Yeah, it's very nice to meet all of you. And I also can see here that it's probably useful if different people choose different parts to pin, because I'm actually adjusting the Zoom right now, and I see that one of the Zoom pieces has automatic translation into Chinese. So I'm not going to use the spotlight so that you can choose which one you want to pin. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here to meet all of you. Bard has quite a few of the things that I do. That's true. Maybe I'll add one more thing, which is what makes me quite happy to meet all of you. In fact, the first time that I learned about Shanghai Jiao Tong University was because I was at the world finals of a computer programming competition. It's the big international computer programming competition for all universities in the entire world. And the international champion that year was Shanghai Jiao Tong University. I was on the Caltech team. We did not do as well that year. But this is how I got to know, because I grew up in the United States. So as my introduction, I'm American-born Chinese. I grew up in the United States. I went to university. I studied mathematics, but I also did a lot of computer things on the side, which is why I was also at the world finals of the International Collegiate Programming Competition. But nowadays, I'm a math professor at Carnegie Mellon University. I also coach the Math Olympiad team. But what Google Bard did not catch is that I'm also a social entrepreneur. So I like to use my ideas, I like to use what we have in mathematics to think about how to create very practical things in this world. I'm sure we'll talk about that later in this chat.
That's a very wonderful introduction. Audience, say we have the most part of the introduction for Dr. Low, correct? But there is a human touch that the doctor himself gave us. That's wonderful. Probably that's another way of very good appetizer for us to open up this discussion, talk about large language model, talk about ChatGPT, talk about the invasion of general AI into our world. Well, let's cut to the chase. When I was, I'm actually going through this part more outlines. I asked it to help me to prepare a list of questions so that we can start this very nice discussion. So we started this registration probably like 2 weeks ago. We received a number of questions, but to summarize, there are 3 keywords. One is technology, second is education, and third is innovation. I believe every one of us have heard this, keywords from what Dr. Low just described just now. So let's just cut to the chase. How do you think about the technology like ChatGPT? How is this technology going? There are people I'm talking about this innovation technology, compare it into iPhone. I believe you know who I'm talking about. And people compare this to fire. And people talk about compare this to invention of electricity and also invention of PC. So there among the 4 answers, what is your answer to compare the importance of invention of ChatGPT? In this historical point of view?
Oh, I think I would compare it to fossil fuels. I would compare it to the ability to multiply the amount of work that a single person can do, which is what powered the Industrial Revolution about 200-300 years ago. And that's because now with ChatGPT, one person can do a lot more. I was just looking. One of my friends, actually, he's also an entrepreneur. He posted on his LinkedIn last week about how they had some new startup that was doing something, I think it's in law space, in the legal space. And what it said was, it said something quite interesting. It said, AI will not replace lawyers, but now one lawyer can produce 10 times as much work as they used to be able to do. So there will still be a need for lawyers, but each lawyer can make 10 times as much output as they used to do before. You know what that means? That means you need 10 times fewer lawyers. Just like how the Industrial Revolution meant that you needed 10 times fewer people. And that will create massive upheaval in the workforce.
Wow, even lawyers are considering their job prospect. Wow, oh my God, that's a power of ChatGPT. And you are an educator, you are an innovator. And what's your opinion about this technology's impact on education, specifically?
Well, all of education needs to change fast, actually, right now. And the reason is because you can tell that the education is obsolete because if you give the exam to ChatGPT, it scores very well. Actually, when I say very well, let me just quickly pull up a chart because that would be the easiest way for me to explain this. I'm just pulling up a chart because I'm able to share my own screen. Let me just click this. Yeah. So what's the easiest way? I'm pulling this from the official OpenAI research page, which is how I like to get the information directly from the source. So I just put this here. I am now here. Let me make myself big. So now I'm on the full spotlight. And this is from the research brief that came out when GPT-4 was released. This is quite remarkable. Let me adjust myself. I'll put myself over here. And what you see here is how well ChatGPT is now doing on many standard exams. And the height of the bar is the percentile. Of course, if it goes all the way to the top, that's 100%, 100 percentile. And what you can see here is, for example, for law, well, there's the uniform bar exam. That's probably the best example. So uniform bar exam, that's to become a lawyer. And the ChatGPT version 3 got up to here, which is 10 percentile. And the way to read this chart is that the ChatGPT version 4, that's the green bar, got all the way to 90th percentile. That's the law exam. But all of these other exams, actually, if I just look at, for example, let's look, AP Biology. AP in America is a college level equivalent course in biology. And the newest ChatGPT 4 gets up to about 85th percentile. So what we're seeing here is that the normal exams that people do in school have become very easy for ChatGPT to solve. That shows that we need to teach something different in school. Because if you're only teaching kids how to do this kind of a thing, and ChatGPT can do it, then the kids are learning how to be worse than ChatGPT.
That's a lot of powerful show for how GPT can champion the exams. Have you seen any messages or new studies about how ChatGPT can do the Chinese college entrance exam, 高考?
That would be very interesting. So I think it's because the research here was largely made in the US, so I don't think they tried to put the 高考 in. But I would actually expect that ChatGPT is also quite good in the 高考. Basically anything, let me explain why. Anything which you can get better at by practice, AI can be better than people. Because if you think about what powers ChatGPT, it is looking for patterns. So the way ChatGPT is trained is that lots and lots of text goes in, and it looks for the big patterns in the text. That's equivalent to Shwati. When you're doing lots of practice, your brain is trying to get used to patterns. So my point is that ChatGPT and Shwati are the exact same thing. They are the exact same thing, with one difference. ChatGPT has more memory than a person, and it has faster processing speed than a person, and it never forgets. So, and it can combine everything that it has done. It has sucked in terabytes, I think, of information. Maybe definitely gigabytes of information, probably terabytes of information. All of these past examples. So if I see that most people are preparing for exams by practicing, that is something that the ChatGPT can learn to do. That's, by the way, where the Olympiads and where the more creative exams come very different. Because there are other kinds of exams where even if you just practice, it is not enough. You need to actually learn how to be creative. So the future of education is to move away from things where you just practice and move towards where you come up with new ideas.
So any standardized test was sort of cracked by ChatGPT already, or on the way.
Yes. Because you see, the way that let me give another example. This is the one that made me realize that this is very powerful, too powerful. Okay, so I'm just going to pull over another example here. For me, I have to juggle a few monitors, but that way I'll be able to pull one over. Here we go. Oops, I want to move the other one. Right. Bear with me. Great. So I'm going to go and share what was one of the first things that made me realize that this ChatGPT can really practice the kind of tricks that normally we have people practice. So here I'm on ChatGPT again, and I'm going to ask it a question. This is the recording. So I'll show. I asked ChatGPT to do this question. I asked ChatGPT, here's a math contest problem. So it has a trick. Factorize 899. And what ChatGPT said was, sure, I can help you with that. To factorize 899, we can employ a trick that involves finding the prime factors of the number. In this case, it's helpful to know that 899 is close to 900, which is a perfect square, 30 times 30. Let's consider the difference between 900 and 899, which is 1. Now we can think of 899 as a difference of two squares. 900 minus 1 is 30 plus 1 times 30 minus 1, which is 31 times 29. So the prime factorization of 899 is 29 times 31. Wow. This is actually a problem which normally people think of as a, oh shoot, problem, like maybe a little bit Olympic math, like a trick question. However, the ChatGPT is able to do it, and able to do it with the trick, which is the surprise to me. But then I thought about it and I realized the reason it can do the trick is because ChatGPT has been trained on lots and lots of text examples. And surely among those text examples was some kind of 奥数课本, or like some maybe a 练习册 or something like that. If you just put in a lot of practice problems and a lot of practice methods, solved practice problems into ChatGPT, then it will actually learn the trick.
So it's actually trick learning, not mathematically solving the problem, the example you showed me just now. Is that right?
Yes. So basically, if people are learning how to do math by memorizing 套路, if they're just looking at a lot of examples and trying to memorize all the 套路, well, ChatGPT is going to do better than them on all of this.
That's wonderful. I mean, I have to admit that I didn't know you can speak such a proper Chinese, 套路, 高考 and many other things. Well, we probably should in the future. We probably can speak Chinese. Well,
we'll see.
Well, just one other housekeeping thing. For audience, if you like to ask Dr. Lo a few questions, it is your time. Just put into the chat box. So our other host will read that to Dr. Lo after our fireside, conversation. It's wonderful. Wow, yes, have a wonderful sharing. So as an educator, your evaluation of ChatGPT's capability. This feels like it's very powerful tool, powerful technology. So but that is a perspective from the educator's point of view. Among this audience, we have a lot of parents, including me. So we are very worried or interested to know how, with this incoming technology, how is the learning experience from the students could be different from before?
Right. So I think that before, people were always trying to prepare for exams. And actually, a lot of people would have their kids take classes where the classes will just teach you, they'll teach you methods, they'll teach you 知识点, and then you have lots of practice. And you do the practice. And every class, you think of how many knowledge points are taught in the class. But if you look at what teaching a knowledge point means, it used to be, actually it still is, sadly, that teaching a knowledge point meant watching the teacher show the most efficient way to solve a problem of that type. And then the students would practice many other versions of the same problem type with different numbers. Now, that kind of learning method is obsolete because ChatGPT can do it today. That's my point. So what needs to change is that people need to teach their kids how to come up with their own idea, how to solve a problem in a creative way. And to teach that, really, there's no substitute for having a person who can teach, who knows the subject so well that they can ask the student, you tell me your ideas. And then the teacher needs to be able to use the student's ideas to solve the problem. This is completely different from the experience many people have. Many people have the experience where the teacher shows a method and you're supposed to use that method. I've flipped this around to the way that I teach in my university. And whenever I teach any kids, it's always the same. The teacher needs to know everything about the subject, not only what they're teaching in this year. They need to know much, much more math. If you're teaching 6th grade, you should know math all the way to 9th, 10th, 11th grade, not only to 6th grade. Because then when the student starts asking very funny questions like, why can't I divide by 0? The teacher's answer is different from saying, because you can't. Okay, but the point is, we have to let every student suggest their own way and to start walking off in that way with the teacher's guidance so that they learn that if they ever see something that is new to them, they are able to generate their own way to solve it, instead of just saying, I haven't seen it before, so I can't do it.
Why you can divide by 0? Probably in the past, students will ask your parents or teacher for that. In the future, maybe they'll just ask ChatGPT, right?
That's true. They might ask ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will give them some kind of an answer. I think, by the way, the interplay, this is also a good point, that in the future, you can learn a lot just between you and ChatGPT. You just have to be able to figure out when it's wrong. Sometimes ChatGPT will tell you things that are very wrong. And so that's an important detail. But actually, I want to go to this point again. What you just said about, oh, student can ask the ChatGPT. See, actually, it has been possible for students to learn on their own already for 10 years. This is actually how the United States, maybe 15 years. This is how the US International Math Olympiad team became so strong. Sometimes people ask, what's the difference between US IMO team training and China IMO team training? I'd say the biggest difference is that we don't train the US IMO team. They train themselves. They don't go to special classes. In China, I used to go to China before the pandemic. I used to go 6 times a year. And every time I would go through Shanghai also, because that is a major international airport coming back to USA. But when I went to China, I saw that so many of the schools that I went to have special 竞赛班, or some kind of a very advanced class for all of the top students. And they would have real coaches coaching the students to learn more math. In the US, the people who represent the US on the IMO team usually don't go to schools where there are special math contest classes. They learn themselves on the internet. So the difference is that actually, if a student becomes so self-motivated that they want to go on the internet and use every possible resource to learn, it's hard to stop them. In fact, one of the top guys in the United States just finished his high school 1 year ago. His name is Luke Robitaille. He happens to be from Texas, and his parents didn't teach him. He just went and found his own resources, and he was the first guy in the history of the United States middle school math competition to win twice. #1 in the entire US twice. He also has 4 gold medals at the International Math Olympiad. But this is a guy who taught himself lots and lots of things. So when I say this, I mean, I'm pointing out that, yes, ChatGPT makes it so that you can learn on your own, but you could already for the last 10 or 15 years, which is why my strategy has always been find the people who are 10 years old and 11 years old and make them want to learn math. This is also different. This is not saying make them learn math or show them the methods. No. You want to make them love learning math. You want to have the kids be inspired. You want that when the kids are in your class, their eyes are lit up. They're not just looking bored, feeling like their parents forced them to take a math class. This is actually a very important point. And so now that there's the ChatGPT, people like Luke would learn even faster. My point is that the ChatGPT is making it so that the self-motivated learner will be able to run faster than the person in the specialized math training class.
So ChatGPT is really empowering, but empower students in different way. The fast learners, those people with love, will probably have the most empowerment. Wow, That's very entitlement.
Yeah, actually, there's another statistic that's useful here because there was just the pandemic. And after the pandemic, people did some analysis to see what happened to learning loss. And yes, it applies to all subjects, not only mathematics. But people analyzed this learning loss. And actually, what I found interesting in the statistics is that there was a particular group which correlated with self-motivation, and they didn't have learning loss. Actually, they had learning gain. So the pandemic is a funny thing. If you're not motivated, your ability fell like crazy. If you were motivated, then you suddenly were not limited by the speed of your class, and you just ran off on the internet and used everything else. So what I see ChatGPT doing is it's going to even further amplify the gap, which makes it even more important for 10-year-old and 11-year-old kids to actually like learning math and all subjects instead of just doing it because their parents told them that it's an important thing to do.
I can probably I think about the parents from the audience. Your remarks just now probably make us even more panic because that seems like the Juan, Juan, the
Yes.
competitiveness.
Yes.
The amplitude seems is opening up, not closed down with the introduction of ChatGPT. Is that right?
Well, yes, but at the same time, a lot of the people who lost out through the Juan were the ones who weren't motivated either. Actually, it has a bad effect of making kids get really not motivated.
Exactly. Well, that's from what you described just now, the love of not just math, but the subject you're learning is truly important. And we know that you are 学霸, right? How did you find your passion when you were a kid? How you love you do? I remember you are the silver medalist in Math Olympiad 1999, right? And #1 in Caltech when you graduate. That's definitely 学霸. So would you like to share your experience, how you find your goal, how you find your motivation?
Right. So I actually was just interested in doing hard things. So I also think this is what's worth teaching the younger generation. You see, I also have 3 kids. So we also think in our family, what do we do with kids? We are not very interested in just having our kids do math. That's not the more important thing. It's not important to see how fast we can get them accelerated in math. It's more important to see how can we build a love of trying hard things. You see, because that's what I like. I like the challenge. And why did I fall in love with math? It was because there was some very hard math. And if I see something I don't know how to do, I want to do it. This is maybe something I also got from my parents. My father told us when we were small, he said he didn't really mind whatever, he didn't have a direction for us. He didn't tell us you need to do this or you need to do that. He just said whatever you choose to do it really well and put a lot of energy into it. And I think this is actually the secret, because when you try to cook a path for your kid to say, this is what you're going to do, sometimes your kid doesn't know how to choose their own path then, because they're just following your path, or maybe they're not even interested in that path, and then they will not push all the way through. But if you instead try to find your own path with the idea that whatever you choose to do, try to take it really seriously, well, then you'll go pretty far. You'll go in some direction. Somebody asked, what's my method to inspire a kid? I was also thinking about that a lot, because I think that whoever is teaching needs to be more than just good at the subject. Actually, you also need to be good at performing. My father taught me this. He had also won awards before for teaching. He won some award for the best teacher, best professor in the College of Engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he was a professor. He is still a professor. But he would always talk about at the dinner table how being a professor or being a teacher is just like being a stand-up comedian. You need to make the student think that you really like what you're doing, and then maybe they'll also like what you're doing. So this is a combination.
Right? You're saying about performing.
Performing, stand-up comedy. That's what he said.
Performing. Oh, really? Oh my God.
Yeah. He said that over dinner table so many times. He would always say, teaching is like stand-up comedy. And by the way, he wouldn't just tell stupid jokes. That's not the point. You don't need to tell stupid jokes. It's not about the funny joke that matters. It's that somehow the person talking looks like they actually care about what they're talking about, instead of just telling you this is how you take the integral of x squared, you put the 2 down here and get the 3. You know, there's a lot of difference here. And I myself also took performing classes.
Did you apply that into the training of the US team for the Math Olympiad?
Well, as the coach, I used that to try to get the people interested in working hard and putting the full energy in. I did not tell the US team to go and take acting classes, because that's not, well, actually, I did. I told them to do that for their future life success. But during our training, we didn't spend a lot of time training them on performing. However, I myself used the performing things to try to coach them forward, to put all the energy in. Actually, I just came back from the International Math Olympiad. That's where I flew from last night. But actually, I came back from the International Math Olympiad alumni reunion. In fact, I founded this. For the first time in history, there is now an International Math Olympiad alumni reunion at every International Math Olympiad. This invites anyone who was previously at IMO can join. So my roommate that I was staying with at the reunion, we had a lot of conversations about many things. But actually, the guy's very interesting. The guy was previously on the US International Math Olympiad team, and now he's a pretty serious guy. He runs his own trading firm, so he's in financial services. And a point that shows that this guy is really good is that there was a time in this guy's life where he was single-handedly responsible for 10% of the volume of stock traded on the New York Stock Exchange. One guy was responsible for 10% of the stock trading volume on the entire United States New York Stock Exchange. So this is the guy. So he's serious. But we were talking about how actually when you're looking at the performance of a team, he said a lot of people only have been thinking about the raw mathematical ability. And he said you should add the psychologists in. Because by the way, sports, if you know, sports also has sports psychologists. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm just explaining all of these things of combining the raw ability together with the psychology and the motivation. These are the things that ChatGPT cannot do yet. And this is what we need to add the human into.
That makes me, trying to imagine what kind of a course you are teaching. So how does your course look like when you are teaching in either College Mellon or the US, Olympiad team?
It looks like a game show. You know, there's game show. Game show is called Wheel of Fortune or any kind of game show. Game show means, okay, here's a problem. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. There are usually about 50 to 100 students in my class. And I say, hey, everyone, why don't you start brainstorming ideas? And then as people brainstorm ideas, I put the ideas on the board. I write every idea on the board, whether it's right or wrong. The wrong idea, someone else will raise their hand and say, hey, I see a problem with that. Then I put another comment underneath it. Oh, maybe that one was wrong. But every idea that people generate goes onto the board. And then the students learn that they see all the ideas come, and then somehow they see, oh, you use idea 4 and idea 7 put together, and you get the solution. So I'm actually playing the role of a game show host, and students are generating their ideas. And by the end of the class, the students have learned how to solve the problem their own way.
That's another, your everyday teacher, what your everyday teacher looks like.
Well, it's hard. I will tell you from experience, it is very hard to teach this way, because when you teach this way, you cannot prepare the whole lesson in advance. You see, usually when you prepare a lesson, you make a plan. You will show these facts and do these problems in a certain way. When I show up for class, I need to know everything. Everything. Not just a little bit, not just this focus, but everything. Yes, it is like the case study method at Harvard Business School, completely improvisational. And that's why the Harvard Business School professor is chosen specially. So this teaching technique that I've just described is actually not only my teaching technique, it is the teaching technique of every professor or instructor who happens to completely understand the whole subject to the point where they are not scared of any idea suggested by any student.
So probably only like 1% of the teacher are doing your way. So what's your suggestion to those kids who don't have the privilege to have an innovative teacher like you? How can they survive?
Well,
I'm sorry to challenge you. It's not part of the question we read.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'll tell you, actually, the way to deal with this is that if you're alone, and you don't have a teacher like that, you fortunately can still fight with questions on your own. Okay. I did create an entire system to scale up this kind of teaching and make it available to everyone. So this is actually the social entrepreneurship that I'm working on. Maybe we'll talk about it later in this interview. But I actually came up with a way to deliver this to everyone by being able to scale this massively. Because you did point out that it's hard for everyone to access this because of the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of the people who have this skill to be able to do anything in math, a lot of them don't choose to be math teachers, especially not teaching 10-year-old and 11-year-old kids. So the limiting factor before was that there were these people in the world, but they were not choosing to teach 10 and 11-year-old kids. I managed to solve that problem. Now, if you join our system, of course, we can solve that problem for you. And if you don't join our system, the other way is to do what my wife did to teach our own kids, which is that she would actually use that method to teach our own kids herself. So if you have a background in science or technology, you can also do the same thing that I just described. And when your kids go to school, they won't get it there, but they can get it at home from mom and dad.
Now you're talking because Charlton University is famous for like engineering education and history. So I believe a lot of parents already think about this. And I mean, just for those for people in the audience, please keep mute just for the smoothness of this conversation. I really enjoyed conversation with Dr. Lo. I believe you do that as well. I mean, I really appreciate that, like Dr. Lo just mentioned. You're just back from your international trip and now being dragged into this conversation. Well, that's really wonderful. And you have enjoyed such a wonderful, student career and then education in the career. You found your passion especially in the math part. So I know you have a big scope for your summer. Can you show us how many cities you're going to travel this summer? I'm really impressed.
Oh, sure. I can just put this across. Yeah, actually, I came back. I was very happy to talk to you just now, today, because this happens to be my 1 day of break. This is my 1 day of break because I flew back. I got back to home last night at 10 o'clock p.m. And then now I am going on tour. Just a second, let me move this back here. I'm going on tour. So these are all of the cities that I'm speaking in between April and September of this year. Because I do coach the United States of America, and that means that I need to go through the whole United States of America. Every single one of these dots is a public math talk. If you happen to live in the USA, maybe I will come to your city. And I did about half of these in the April, May, and then the second half is going to be July, August.
Wow, that's really impressive. So I'm a math guy. I'm a data guy. I see that bubble dart on the map. I feel excited. My question for you is, what did you do? I mean, what do you do in that bubble? Well, yeah, for every station, that's like 65, you said, right? 65 stations. For
Something like that. Yeah, the Wall Street Journal did the counting. I mean, this was covered in the Wall Street Journal in the United States. But yeah, what do? I actually give something like this as a talk, like this conversation we're having here. I give it as a talk where I show everybody what can ChatGPT do. I give everyone the alert, the wake-up call that we need to be very careful to rethink what we're doing for all of education, because I show them that ChatGPT can do normal problems. And then I start talking about strategies to help students, help their own kids to become as human as possible, to be useful in this new post-AI world. And then, of course, I explain how I started to talk about the story of invention by showcasing one of the inventions that I came up with, which is all of this stuff about education. But the main point is to actually interact with a lot of these young people and have them hopefully see that if you do math, and if you like to think, and also if you do a lot of human-related stuff, then you might be able to come up with things that the AI cannot come up with. And so the hope, of course, is to try to help provide a bit of inspiration for the younger generation.
That's impressive. And we should be focusing on math, but I do have one question. Is this innovative approach only applicable to math? How about other subjects?
Oh, it's applicable to all subjects. But you see, I also happen to observe that if you properly learn this creative thinking power through math in the age 10, 11, 12, then you can learn anything else that you want in the whole science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by using that raw power. This is what I observed myself. I studied a lot of math, but then later I went to do physics. I also did some computer science. Basically anything in science, technology, engineering, and math. If you have a very, very solid creative math background, nothing can stop you from learning all the other things. Actually, during COVID, I was involved in making some kind of an iPhone app. And at some point, I was hacking the iOS, Apple's iPhone operating system, because I needed to make an app that would work all the time. If you use an iPhone, you might know that when the app is not on the screen, it's not running. Now, that doesn't work if the app is supposed to be always running to talk to other people who are nearby. And so I sat down for 3 weeks and just read very carefully the entire operating system documentation from Apple, and I found some loopholes. You see, this is what mathematicians can do. This is also why mathematicians are usually employed as code breakers. So what I did is I just used the mathematical understanding to suck in the way the Apple iPhone operating system worked, and then I built an app which to this date is one of the only apps on the iPhone which just keeps running even if it's not on the screen. So I'm just explaining this is the concept of using that core mathematical creative thinking to go and do something else. So yes, you can use the same teaching style to teach other things, but I think the more important thing is to teach all the 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, no matter what they want to do, teach all of them how to be able to come up with their own ideas and to enjoy thinking about math and science, or think about math. And then after that, they can do everything else, and they can learn it for free on the internet too.
That's a great that conversation is really great. For the thought experiment, just put into math into as a subject and apply to many other subjects. Probably not change the world, but change the world in a very small step at a time. That's wonderful. I have a hint from one of the timekeeper saying this time has passed very fast. But I, as a host today, I really want to ask one question on behalf of my son. So he's I attended one of your course, and on his behalf, and he's not a big fan of math. He's a big fan of video game. What are your suggestions to him?
Yeah, I actually think that's where it's so important to have the chance to meet some people who are actually inspiring. I actually think that with a lot of people, the kids are doing what they find love or fun in. And so that's why what I do is I try to make sure that we can teach at large scale, all these 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, that the math is actually far more fun than what they thought. That's honestly my only solution. It's you as a parent can only do so much. But what we do is when you were talking about performing arts, actually the main thing I work on is I hire professional comedians, actors, and actresses to teach high school math geniuses how to be interesting and captivating. And then they turn around and teach middle school students. This is actually how I've been able to scale up what I just said. Like, that's why earlier we talked about this and I said, well, actually it's already been solved because I already built the entire platform to do this, and it scales all the way and it runs internationally.
That's really, really great. I mean, we start with talking about the impact of technology in a bigger way, and then we focus on education, what to learn, what to teach, and probably how to grade because the standard changes. And we also talk about your successful career as a student, as an educator, and as an innovator. I really enjoy this conversation, and I'm hoping that your social entrepreneurship can really bring the the benefit to the youngsters, the generations to come. Thank you so much, Dr. Law, for your very nice, very inspiring suggestion. And looking forward to more programs you and your team bring to this world. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm going to pass on back to the host. Bing, thanks.